Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, summer edition of the Baseline NBA podcast, and a special edition of that. It's not often that we get the opportunity during the downside of the season, like the off season, so to speak, where we can get to break bread and collaborate with some great individuals, great sportscasters, podcasters in the space, helping to deliver the narrative, the story about why the game of basketball is so unique and well-loved. And probably no better person for us when we do our shows and segments is us having a special guest on here, which we're going to roll. We're going to introduce him in a moment. But, I got to roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw. Repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I think so, or unless your GPS tracker has you somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Because, you've been a man gallivanting around the globe. I'm just glad that you're able to stand fast. I put an anchor down at you so that we can do this week's episode, my brother.
Well, the off season is a time to travel and, to do those things. And, when you're married like I am, when the wife says we got to pack up and go somewhere, you got to pack up and go somewhere. So, but as you alluded to, I am home getting ready for the full time and some of the fun that's going to be happening in that space, but also gearing back up for this NBA season. But enough about all of that, man. We have an amazing, amazing guest. I knew a label mate of 19 Media Group as well too. But I'll let you do the honors as you always do, Mike.
Oh no, you should actually do the honors. You already had the red carpet laid out nice and perfect, Stanley steamed.
Stanley Steen, wow.
Stanley, yeah, man. Stanley Steen, steamer cleaners. There you go. Anyway, let me not joke, man. As you can tell, right dead smack in the middle of it and ready to rock and roll, label mate, and also host of one of the premier podcasts in the basketball space, Basketball Now and Then. Our man, Uriah Young, is joining us here. Uriah, welcome to the 19 Media Group family. Welcome aboard to the Baseline NBA podcast. I know this is your first opportunity to hop on board with the dynamic duo, man. So, welcome.
Hey guys, I feel like a celebrity because I listen to your show quite often. And when I met you guys last January, when I got on the plane back to Philly, I was mad at myself because I had never heard of you guys until I met you. And ever since, I listen to you guys religiously, man. Your takes on the NBA is so impressive with the Baseline podcast. And I'm very honored to be with you guys. Thank you.
Well, listen, we are honored to have you on board. And also honored to have you hop on and chop it up with us with a very poignant subject of our show we call They Reminisce. And so we'll get into that in a few moments. But I want to take a couple of minutes, man, to let the world know from, in our circle, in our space, who you are, what brought you into the realm of doing podcasts and specifically the show that you do, where it's more than just, talking about the topics that are currently going on in the NBA. It's actually opening up people's minds and having them really do a comparative study into the profile of the athletes. And I'm really fascinated by that. And I think it would be great for you to help introduce our listeners to what that actually means and why your show is as unique as it is.
Sure. Thank you for leading into that. So I started writing for the Sixer Sense, which is a fan-sided site, in 2020. COVID was happening, and everyone's trying to figure out, what can we do constructive without going crazy, cabin fever. And I started writing about my beloved 76ers. Yes, we do have LeBron. Thank you very much. But before LeBron, there was the frustration of Ben Simmons and things going on with the drama and the process. And I decided to put that away in terms of a lot of the editorial pieces I was doing. And I signed on with Philly Sports Network, which gave me an opportunity to go to the practice facility and cover stories on players like Bobby Jones, cover the practices with Joel Embiid and James Harden at the time. So I worked with Philly Sports Network for 2.5 years. And then I realized, guys, I had a bigger vision. Although I do love my Sixers, I feel as though the podcast that I was looking for hadn't been, I guess, for lack of a better word, discovered yet. So I figured, how can I create something that offers NBA fans a little bit more than analysis and opinions, which, everybody does. You guys do a great job with it. But I felt like it was a little saturated. So I carved out a space where I was able to gather a team and create a show that offered nostalgia for the veterans of NBA fandom like us, and offer context and inspiration for younger fans of the NBA. And what we do, Cal, and obviously Shaw, is we compare players past to present. And we do it in a way where it's not necessarily putting one player down to elevate our favorite guy, but we try to do it in a respectful way so that we give fans an opportunity to learn about their favorite players and do a little reminiscing at the same time. So we're going into season 4. I was doing some research today, comparison we're doing. I know some people are like, really? But we're doing a comparison of Josh Hart to Jerry Sloan. And when I tell you, I researched every comparison, and I was telling one of my guys today, like I was enthralled by the research that I found out about Jerry Sloan and how similar his game style and approach to the game is similar to Josh Hart. So I'm excited to go into season 4, and I'm excited to be able to share that with you and your audience.
Before we get into, the juxt of our show, right, in which, we're completely stoked in doing it, I'd be remiss if not to ask you the question I think a lot of people want to know is, why is it important for us to be able to do this, right? Like, what about it? I understand that in the podcasting realm, in the space, right, we're trying to do something unique. But I do also know that we gain a lot from what your show has to offer. And I think part of that context is also defined by the team that you have, right? Like, you guys have chemistry, and you guys, because of how you deliver that information, how you deliver the points, how you lay out the statistics, the moments and things of that nature, it lends itself to telling a story for people to properly understand where this conversation starts, where this conversation lands, and where it can eventually go to after you guys go off the air. And I just want to kind of get your perspective on it, on how important it was for you to be able to do it with the peoples that you have on, and what that actually means in the grander scheme of things as far as where the show is going to go for season 4.
Well, the team that I have, Lucas, Ben, Maurice, Winston, Cody, and DJ, we've grown our team. And the toughest part for me was in 2023 is like, how do I pitch this idea to these guys that love basketball, but, enter a realm that really hasn't been touched yet, which is the comparison space, and a comparison space where it's not necessarily toxic. And I think it's exciting for all of us to keep the energy going and to stay enthusiastic about our vision, knowing that there are fans around the world that love this great game of basketball. And it doesn't have to be us, meaning podcasters, versus the players themselves. I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of players are putting a wall up because there's so much. Everyone has a platform and an opinion. And it's like, if I'm going to contribute to this conversation and literally be a bridge between the past and the present, younger generation and older generation, the best way to do it is to compile a team of passionate basketball fans, like the guys that I have with me, and aligning myself with a platform like you, 19 Media Group, and the wonderful job that you guys do, and do it in a way that it's not about me. It's not about us. It's about the game. And a lot of times, even the players themselves, they puff their chest out and they want to prove that, their career was everything. And it took a lot to get there. But to the players, podcasters, like, you don't have to be that way. And to the journalists, the guys that cover the teams, the beat writers, players or authors and journalists that we've interviewed on our show, you can offer analysis without taking such, lack of a better word, personal shots at the players. So in essence, guys, team is everything. Chemistry is everything. I still feel like we have a long way to go. I love our chemistry, but I feel like we're still growing. And ultimately, 10 years from now, 20 years, 30 years, I hope that, fans from Africa and Asia can listen to how we cover the players and come away with an appreciation of the game, past, present, and for the future.
Very well said, Uriah. And I'd say when I met you, the thing that stood out to me was something you said. We're chilling out there in Orlando, and it's like, yeah, I want, a son and a dad on a Sunday morning, you know what I mean, to kind of listen to the show. And, that son, he's probably knows, obviously, the player from today's game and understanding that. And the dad is like, hey, man, but this guy was a bad boy, too. And exactly. And have an opportunity to really, kind of share that moment. And we just had a meeting earlier this week, too. And your conversations about making things evergreen and celebratory really aligns with us as well, too, right? In terms, especially the celebration of the sport. And I think it makes it a perfect alignment for what you have going on with basketball now and then, and that amazing, amazing team that you have. I too listen to your platform and to your shows as well. And I'm always intrigued by how creative you are by coming up with those comparisons, because sometimes they're not the seamless fit that some people might think. They're like, oh, that player and that player. Sometimes you go a little bit different, right? And then you can bring it all together. And I love that you can even challenge the basketball mind in that way, you and your team. So shout out to you and the great stuff that you're doing there with basketball now and then. Cannot wait for season 4. I got to catch up on some episodes too. I haven't listened to everything yet because you got a nice catalog. So I just thought you were as well too. And but again, it's evergreen. So I have a great opportunity to kind of go back and listen. So I'm very proud of you, brother, and proud to have met you and have you on our show here today.
Awesome. Absolutely. Lee Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast with our special guest and label mate, Uriah Young, joining us here. So coming up, we are going to get into our segment, They Reminisce, and the spotlight will be shown on the great Isiah Thomas. You do not want to miss out on that. But as always, you got to make sure we give you the plugs. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at the Warren Shaw. You can get at me at Game Face Lee, the show's Twitter handle at www.thebaselinenba.com. You can always go to that website and be able to not only listen to this episode, but all of the episodes that we got archived for your listening pleasure. And if you're catching us on the YouTube channel, we'd like to say hello to you and yours. And if you catch that blue and white logo down the lower left part of the screen, that is the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, you're running these content streets. So be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com or on the YouTube, just on the search, just put 19 Media Group. And you can lock in and catch the Baseline NBA podcast, or you can also catch our man Uriah and his podcast as well, too. And all of the great content creators that are part of the 19 Media Group family, whether it's sports, music, entertainment, culture, you name it, we've got it. So be sure to go to the 19 Media Group page and check us out, man. We always like to open it up for our peoples and for our new listeners. We always like to say welcome to you and yours. Coming up, it's time for us to do a little reminisce with the great Isiah Thomas. Don't go anywhere.
You've earned this. Now it's time to embark on your own personal adventure. Book your vacation with exquisite travel and tours today. Explore the world and discover yourself.
We're back, the Baseline NBA podcast. Time for us to do a little They Reminisce Over You. And sometimes we got to remind people about how this all comes about. Everybody understands that Sean and myself, we grew up in hip hop. That was us. We grew up in the culture. We grew up not just with the clothes and the fashion, the fashionism that goes on with it. It's also the music. And Shaw knows this better than anybody because most people who tend to know me by my handle, I tend to go by CL Mecca. CL Mecca is obviously reminiscent of who? Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Mecca and the Soul Brother. There you go. And of course, one of the greatest hip hop songs that people sometimes still to this day don't give its just due or respect unless you're quote unquote an old head is the song They Reminisce Over You. Shout outs to Trouble T. Roy, right? It's like, so the whole idea and the concept of They Reminisce Over You is no more than just about it being about the hip hop aspect of things, but it's also helping us to reminisce about a certain player, a certain moment, a certain time, a certain team. and kind of putting people back in that perspective of, hey, while we're appreciating what is happening right now, let's also try to appreciate who may have been, quote unquote, the originator or the start of something within that era as an originator. And so the focus is going to be on the great Isiah Thomas. Now, I will say as a caveat, you had to pull teeth for me, boy, because if there's any team who the Boston Celtics loathed next, you know what I'm saying, next to the New York Knicks or next to the Chicago Bulls, man, it'd be them damn Detroit Pistons. And at the head of it, the head of that quote unquote snake is the great Isiah Thomas, one of the greatest guards to ever play the game of basketball. So I'll start with you, Uriah. Tell me, when you hear the name Isiah Thomas, what words jump out at you as we get into this segment of They Reminisce?
What words stand out? Resilience, leadership, and tremendous skill. I mean, resilience, and if you know his biography, and we compared Isiah Thomas to Kyrie Irving in season 1 of Basketball Now and Then. I remember researching and actually producing the show and executing it. We all know, if you know basketball, he came up in Chicago, very, very rough situation, raised by a mom who adored him, and grew up in abject poverty. And through the mouth of Isiah himself, he reminisced in an ESPN segment years ago where he came home from college and he, was with his girlfriend and she dropped him off. And as she drove away, the lights were out. They didn't have any power in his house. So when people see Isiah today defending his legacy against the things happening with MJ and all that drama, I feel bad for him that he even feels the need to defend his legacy when he's come so far from humble beginnings, becoming a champion at pretty much every level, being coached under Bobby Knight in the early 80s and getting a championship, a title with the Indiana Hoosiers, and obviously going on with the Bad Boys to take down, sorry guys, your Celtics, on the way to beating the Lakers and the Portland Trailblazers. But his resilience as a human being, giving back, he's done a lot of philanthropy in his lifetime. But ultimately, look, we're here because the highlights. Like, the guy was nasty with the handles. His skill set is, to me, in the 80s was unmatched. No one's touching Kyrie. I mean, in the episode, we compared them. And we said, look, Kyrie holds that title. He has the best handles ever. But before him, if there was no Isiah, you may not have a Rod Strickland. You may not have a Kyrie Irving. So when I think of Isiah Thomas, I think of resilience, I think of skill, and I think of leadership, because ultimately you can't lead the NBA with almost 14 assists a game in a season and not be considered a leader.
I love those comparisons and thoughts. And I will say, back in the day, I was actually an MJ fan before I transitioned to becoming a Celtic fan. So I had a different level of pain, watching Isiah and the Jordan rules, if you will, too, that the Pistons were able to employ and create. And Isiah and the team just kind of getting the best of those Jordan Bulls for a very long time. And I'd say, similarly, I love the word resilience for him. But I also like the word in terms of like his able to be creative. I do think what you said, especially on that episode too, like his ability as a playmaker is probably underrated, and played in a different era. It wasn't as fast as it is now. Obviously, the hand checking and the defense and all that stuff was a little bit different. And I'd be curious to know, like, what if he transitioned in today's game. What would he average scoring wise, assist wise, et cetera, et cetera? Would he become a better 3-point shooter? The team would have to get better spacers around him. They played in an era, they didn't really need that. And he was truly like a true point guard. Would he be considered more of a combo guard here in today's game? I don't know. But either way, we know he would be great. And so I think, that's something that we know his greatness transcends the annuals of basketball time in a lot of great ways. But he caused me a lot of pain when I was first getting into basketball, understanding, again, those Pistons, they were the Bad Boys and they were something to be reckoned with.
Well, let me clarify, because I'm from Philly. So I'm a Sixers fan through and through. I became an NBA fan or a basketball fan the moment Maurice Cheeks dunked the basketball in game 4 when they swept the Lakers back in '83. I was like in first grade jumping around my parents' bedroom, and I was so excited. But remember, when your team gets booted out of the playoffs by the Bulls or whoever, you got to root for someone. And it just so happened that once the Sixers were eliminated, whatever round from 85 to 90, whatever, the Pistons were the team. So I'm like, all right. And then I see Isaiah being creative, like you said, Warren. And I feel fortunate to have grown up in that era because I felt like there was more of a balance. It wasn't, a bunch of chucking up threes, which the game is what it is. I'm not going to complain. I'm not the old guy on the lawn like, oh, the game. No, it's still a good product. The NBA is still a good product. It's just changed. But would Isaiah today shoot more threes? Probably, because that's the system they create within the team. But I do think, Warren, he would in his sleep, he could average double-digit assists, no matter what era.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment, but I like what you were just saying a moment ago, with regards to how you come to like a player or appreciate a player, when you don't have any teeth in the game. So one of the things that I grew up in respecting was the rivalry between the Celtics and the Lakers. And I hated the Lakers, not like, wish death upon them or anything. But if my Celtics were not going to be the team to beat the Lakers, and obviously it meant that they would have to do it in the NBA finals, then whoever that defeated the Celtics, I'm expecting them to go and finish the job, finish the business. And so that was part of the reason why I had an affinity for the Bad Boys Detroit Pistons teams, because they were nothing like what everybody was ooh and ahhing about what was coming out of La La Land, right? The Showtime Lakers, the pretty boys, you know what I'm saying? Quote unquote, the Los Angeles or St. Louis Rams of the NBA, so to speak, right? Like their style was, you know what I'm saying, the belle of the dance. And here comes, these grimy outsiders that people, basically looking at the black sheep. And here you've got this real clean cut, real nice kid like Isiah Thomas, who has the baby face assassin smile, and then goes out there and is willing to take it to your chest plate on a night in, night out basis. He is the smallest guy on the basketball court, but plays with the biggest heart. He plays like he's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or any of the other bigger guards that we can reminisce and remember. And I think, to me, the word that sticks out when I think of Isiah Thomas is ferocious.
Yeah.
Ferocious, because there's a quiet demeanor in someone, right? There's a quote unquote ticking time bomb. You kind of laid out a little bit of the history of Isiah Thomas's upbringing, always fighting uphill. And he's always carried that chip on his shoulder, but he never gave anyone a reason for them to feel any level of sympathy or empathy for him. He wanted you to respect him for what he brought into the basketball court. And that was one of the things that I felt like, in a way, elevated him and also became somewhat his demise, so to speak. Because when there was an opportunity to show grace and civility in how you approach things, he chose not to do it. Whether that's because of the mantra of the team or that's just how he was as a person, you got to see that other side of it at a time where it was like, man, now I got to start not liking you because of the way that you go about doing those things, as if to say he wasn't a great player because of it. I think people chided him because of that. Oh, you're not as great as the great players that suffered defeat and handled it with civility and things of that nature. But you can't deny the numbers. You can't deny the performances. You can't deny what he did and what he accomplished at his size and his level. And I think that, to me, is one of the things that sticks out most when I think about Isiah Thomas is when it came to those big games, you may not have paid attention too much unless you were really watching the game, but his impact on that court superseded and probably usurped a lot of those conversations about how great the Detroit Pistons teams really could have been. And to your point, it's why we even want to transform that conversation to say, what happens if we move an Isiah Thomas into this era of basketball? I will say this one last point. I don't think Isiah Thomas is about that three-point shooting life. I think Isiah Thomas believes that if it's not game-winning basketball, he ain't about that. And he would fight that tooth and nail if he felt that it was counterintuitive to the style of how he grew up playing that game. So if he believed in any way, shape, or form that the three-point is going to be a detriment to the ability to win games with the type of team that he would build, he would not be out there trying to shoot that three. He would kill you with the mid-range or kill you with another style that is more applicable to the way that he sees a team going out and winning, championships, rather than it being a style of basketball that's appeasing to the game of the to the NBA.
Can I chime in? And I'll give you that, Cal, the whole aspect of today's game, too many three-pointers. Would Isiah fall into that category and shoot up a bunch of threes? I think he would, like you said, he would say, I need to do what's best for the team to win. And if it means mid-rangers or getting to the basket, getting fouled, I agree with you. What I will push back on, though, and this is just good dialogue, to just talk about like what's been happening and why he even feels the need to defend himself, is the whole, in my opinion, overblown scenario or situation where he didn't shake hands. Were you were alluding to that earlier, Cal?
Not just that. There have been other, little moments. They don't get highlighted as much because, again, this is at the beginning in the ascension of the Jordan greatness, the Jordan era.
Right.
So it's highlighting that. But what I'm saying is you saw certain moments of that, and then even towards the back end of his career, you kind of got a little bit of that chip on your shoulder kind of mentality carries over a little too much. And especially with the way that the NBA is being marketed, it did a disservice to Isiah Thomas and his image, because part of that has always been about, if you're coming from the hood, if you're coming up in the struggle, that's just a part of who you are. We give you a pass, but then you've become successful. Now you've reached the mountaintop, and now there's this expectation for you to show the younger generation how to act and how to be a certain way, to show good sportsmanship and things of that nature. And I think there have just been those moments where he could have had the opportunity to speak to it differently. He chose not to, or he missed the opportunities to do so. And I think that tarnished the image a little bit, and that's fine because he didn't mind being the bad guy. But I think, to what you're saying, I just didn't want it to only be about the fact that it's the Jordan moment. But I am highlighting that because of that, people overblow the situation and don't appreciate that he grew up in that space where, yeah, you didn't have to shake hands with dude, but they still respected you. And I don't worry about whether or not the opinionated columnist or whoever like that is writing about it, because those guys and we know, and around our way is, hey, we walk away, we could go and have dinner and nobody know about it, or we can be cool with each other and nobody has to know about it, as long as you know and I know it was what we did on the basketball court that spoke more than worrying about what we were supposed to do in front of the cameras or in front of the microphone.
Yeah, I was more, even because I used to coach basketball, coach middle school for a while, 5-6 years. And I feel like back then, I was never a fan of the bad boy style, like the really effusive physical play. It was just over the top. Bill Laimbeer, John Staley, Dennis Rodman. And Isiah was part of that too. He was the leader. What I do think, to your word, overblown, or the whole shaking hands, because, and this is why I like, I'm a Sixers fan, I'm an NBA fan, but I like what Wemby brings. I was talking to Dusty Garza, who covers for the Spurs, earlier today. We were texting back and forth, and they was like, oh, he's 7'7" now, and he's in the building, and he's like, I don't know if he's 7'7", but the point is I think Wembanyama has the mentality of Isiah, where he's not afraid to express himself. He wants to be the best at his position. I think Wemby wants to be the greatest of all time. And I appreciate that. I respect that. Over physicality, I don't think there's any room in the game for that. But if Wemby doesn't shake hands with the Knicks after they just lost the finals, why should we make that bigger than what it is? It's an emotional game. They lost. They probably shook hands in the tunnel, in the parking lot. These guys, for all we know, they vacation in Cancun together, or they go to Mexico, wherever. So I think it's all for show, and I believe Isiah gets a bad rap for that, and I just wish he didn't come across so defensive of his legacy because he's earned the right to get all the applause and praises that he deserves.
Most people will say, if you follow basketball as long as we have, he's criminally underrated just in general, and he had some transgressions, but there's also his post career, which we're not going to get into right now, but he's operated at every level of the game you could possibly think of. You know what I mean? Coaching, general management, president, like he's literally done it all. And that to me is a sign of somebody who does truly, truly, truly love the game. One of the things that I think about watching him was not only his size, what he's able to do at that size, averaging, basically 19 and 9 for the course of his career. I think it was like 970 plus games, in the totality, 13-year career. The guy was like a 12-time All-Star, something like that in the 13 years.
Ridiculous.
Just absurdity. And we don't celebrate that aspect of it enough. And even going back to some early parts of the conversation in terms of like how he played, the size, the handle, and they had other playmakers on the team, but nobody that was as elite as him, right? Joe D was there. He had the microwave as well too, coming off the bench and kind of doing his thing. And Lambeer was a good passer, as a big, if you will, to Rodman, even a good passer as a big. But,
Adrian Dantley.
Yeah.
So they were a squad, but Isiah really did a lot of the creation. And then even if you watch highlights and things of that nature, like so much of his baskets, even the baskets that he get, is him creating for himself, dribble pull-ups, floaters, you know what I mean, pull-up jumpers, and the whole nine. And he was nasty with it. I mean, nasty. That between, I'd say, his 12 to 18 foot, and he'd have that kind of like that leaning jumper when he'd catch you off balance and he'd hit you with a snatchback. It's not as fast as somebody like Kyrie Irving as you compared him to, but I think it's in the mold of, right? He had control of the game, and he wasn't as fast as maybe some of those other players in today's game, so to speak. But his level of control and like poise, and I guess maybe sort of body control was superb. And I would encourage people to kind of go back and watch some of those highlights, or if you see NBA TV and you see an old school Pistons game on, you'll learn some things and you'll see some flashes of some of your favorite players in what Isiah Thomas was able to bring, man, because that handle and that body control, that mid-range jumper, ridiculous.
So Warren, there's a highlight. I think it was a playoff game where Isiah, in the fourth quarter, clock running down, less than 10 seconds left, goes baseline, toward the baseline, and he's kind of running out of space. And he has Atlanta Hawk defenders just converging on him. And he takes the ball and he comes and does like a left-hand layup going out of bounds. And he made it, jumps into the arms of Rick Mahorn. He's excited. Those are the memories that I relive. I'm glad to be talking with you guys about it, because that's what made me fall in love with basketball, because the acrobatics, the body control, like you said, it's hard to do in the moment, let alone in a playoff game with everything on the line. And to me, one of the greatest plays of all time in game, you don't see people doing this. He was on a fast break and he did a bounce pass from half court, a bounce pass. He bounced the ball off the ground and it went, 25 feet in the air. And then he was Chris Mills, caught it on the break in stride, dunked it. Like it kind of bounced around because it was too close to the rim. But nobody is doing that. Yeah. A bounce pass, alley-oop. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. And that's the creativity, Warren, that you were alluding to. And that's what makes Isiah Thomas one of the greatest, most creative players we've ever seen.
I just want to throw this out, and Uriah, I want you to kind of chime in on this aspect of it, because your first season, you do the comparison of Kyrie Irving and Isiah Thomas. And there's something that both of you guys just brought up that I just find very intriguing. And maybe this is just my personal perspective about the Isiah Thomas factor in comparison to the Kyrie Irving factor. One of the things about Kyrie Irving that makes him one of the most dynamic players that we've probably seen in our generation is his one-on-one ability, right? His one-on-one dribbling ability and the ability for him to be able to break you down. And I know we can appreciate that, especially for a person like Isiah Thomas. But the one thing that stands out to me, if I had to make the comparisons between the two, is that Isiah Thomas was the type of guard and the type of dribbler that he commanded where he felt like he had to be for the shot he wanted. Whereas someone like Kyrie Irving, as great as a player as he is, you can tell that there were many moments where if you were physical to him, only his dribble savvy can save him. Whereas a guy like Isiah literally showed you more physicality and showed you more determination to get to the place that he wanted to get to rather than letting the defense dictate where he should be going. And even if the defense dictated him to go to that spot, his confidence of finding a shot or getting the shot, you saw that more in a guy like Isiah Thomas. Not to say that it wasn't prevalent in Kyrie. I'm just saying that that is one of the attributes that always resonated with me about Isiah, that there was not a spot on that basketball court that he didn't feel like, if I got there, I know what I'm going to do with it, right? So even if you felt like you had him at plan A, he's already thinking about B, C, and D. And even those spots, it's not a complete, you're shutting them down. He is still going to get the kind of quality shot that he believes is what's necessary for the team to win, or he has now opened up the space for the rest of his teammates in order for them to get quality shots, ergo his quote unquote almost 10 assists career, per game, right? And that to me is one of the things I've always appreciated about a person like Isiah Thomas, because when we talk about the combo guard, that to me is what is prevalent, where Isiah mostly would concede to the idea of having to be the best scorer, but he will go and score when necessary. But when it came to the distribution of the basketball, when it came to where he needs to be for the best shot possible, that shot is only going to happen unless he puts himself in that space on the floor. And doing that I felt like there was like nobody better in that time frame than a guy like Isiah Thomas, which is why it took the likes of a Michael Jordan bulking up and literally being that kind of guard to hang with an Isiah Thomas, to be physical with him and to be able to stay with him from an agility standpoint and make those shots difficult for him. That was what was good. That was what it was going to take. You could not put smaller guys or guys his size, and you can't put centers or swingmen that are called swingmen now on him, because he had, the perfect combination of being that type of guard to be able to get to those spaces. And that's one of the things that to me has made him one of the most profound guards in the game.
You mentioned something that made me think of eras. The zeitgeist of what's going on with basketball fandom is one era is better than the other. I'm not here to tell anybody that any era is better than the other. All I'm here with you guys is to say these players, when they played, it was just a different style. When Isiah went to the lane, he's going there with Mark Eaton, Akeem Olajuwon. Remember, before he was Hakeem, he was Hakeem. He was going to the paint against Karl Malone. He's getting elbowed and bleeding from his eye against Karl Malone, which was a really dirty, cheap shot. Very dirty play. Kyrie doesn't have to worry about that. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but to your point, Isiah had to learn to absorb contact and to have that toughness, where Kyrie is he's just playing with guys, man. He got the ball on the string, and he just knows he can do whatever he wants. But he doesn't have to worry about the physicality. And that's just the way the game is now. We have to adapt to it. So back to Isiah's greatness, and then we can move on. Look, when I was a kid, I had my Sixers starters jacket. But when it came time for the NBA Finals, I was so locked in. Like you said, Joe Dumars, Vinnie Johnson, Mark Aguirre. And Isiah was the engine of that team. Chuck Daly was, in the driver's seat, but Isiah was such a special player. And I would hope that anybody who watches this episode, anyone, younger than us, would go and watch his YouTube clips, because if there is no Isiah Thomas, we may not have a Kyrie Irving.
I think that's extremely, extremely well said, and maybe an opportunity to jump slightly into other comparisons. So obviously you did the comparison of Kyrie, which we've talked about here on our program. And Cal, I'll kind of kick it to you. Are there other players that you think that have come, obviously after Isaiah, that you think might have been influenced by his style? I think Uriah mentioned a great one in terms of a Rod Strickland, potentially as well there too. But other players from that era, maybe even in today's game, that gives you some shades, not to be identical, but shades of Isiah Thomas.
Shades of Isiah Thomas. Jrue Holiday comes to mind for me. I think one of the things that, again, really stands out to me is the physicality of the guard play. And Jrue Holiday, to me, was a 5-tool player who had most times sacrificed, most of where he was really talented in his days, especially after the Rookie of the Year campaign with the Sixers. He sacrificed a lot in this pursuit to being the consummate point guard, maybe to his detriment, until he finally found that space, going to the Milwaukee Bucks, getting that first championship. I think he really found his calling or his own as far as where he wanted to be as a guard when he paired up with Anthony Davis. So I think of a person like Jrue Holiday, with Isiah Thomas-esque abilities, the physicality, the ability to get into the paint, get dirty with the bigger guys, could distribute the basketball, but also he was a skilled scorer, man. He was a skilled scorer. And he just didn't have great teams for him to display those talents, or the opportunity to display those talents quite the same like Isiah Thomas did. Didn't have coaches like a Chuck Daly, really guiding him through the early part of his years.
I would say, I'm trying to think of one too, and this is it's not spot on, but I say Tony Parker. I think he had a little bit of a handle, a little bit, again, of primarily of a mid-range, guy. Had a sick floater. Obviously could get to the cup as well too. And I don't know if Tony Parker would say that he was influenced by Isiah Thomas, but I think also in terms of like the diminutive stature as well too, Tony Parker was only like 6'2", listed at 6'2". Don't know what he really was. Same thing with Isaiah, probably closer to like 5'11" or 6 foot, to keeping it a buck. I think somebody like him also kind of resonates. And it's really interesting though, because Parker had a very, very different trajectory. We got browbeat, if you will, by Popovich, the tough love, but Isaiah had, a lesser coach than Chuck Daly, to begin his career. And Daly kind of came in and then kind of turned that program around. And ultimately, I think Isaiah too had to change his style and had to adopt the bad boy style as well too. Because I don't think the Pistons were playing like that, initially in Isaiah's first couple of years there too. But I'd say a guy like Tony Parker makes a little bit more sense, not more sense, but a little sense there in comparison. And Uriah, I kind of kick it back to you. Anybody else that you would say now and then, who might compare to the great Isiah Thomas?
Yeah, we did a comparison of Jrue Holiday, and we're doing Tony Parker, not this season, but maybe next season. I thought one of you guys were going to say CP. Chris
I
Paul.
know. I was leaving it for you.
You missed that one, did you? You leaving it for me? Okay.
I was leaving it for you. Listen, great minds think alike. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's got to steal everybody's thunder here. So
okay, all right. Well, it's funny because we did my team we reevaluated season one's comparisons, because 3 years ago we were just getting started. We kind of figuring out where we were going with this whole comparison thing. And there were a few episodes we were like, let's look back. And we were honest. There were maybe 4 or 5 comparisons we did. We were like, all right, we need to redo those players and find someone more, I guess, that mirrors their game a little more. And Isaiah, if I were not to compare him to Kyrie, which Kyrie, you could probably compare to maybe not Jamal Murray, Jamal Crawford with the handles. But I think CP would be good because of the height, the ability to score at will, as well as control the pace, tempo of the game with their facilitation in the basketball. So I think CP, and defensively, CP was a great defender. Isaiah was never afraid. He never backed down from Jordan. So yeah, it's always interesting to go back and reflect and say, which comparisons, are the best. We're basketball now and then, the greatest comparisons, not the perfect comparisons. But I stand on the Isaiah Kyrie comparison episode.
I have a quick follow-up on this one for you, since now we're on the CP3 conversation a little bit. Not to say that I'm saying it's because he didn't win a championship, but what do you think was missing for CP3 that really stood out, that you think back to yourself and like, man, if there's that one thing that you could have taken out of Isiah Thomas and given to CP3, that probably would have elevated CP3 in more championship opportunities that he probably didn't have an opportunity to have for himself. But
I don't think he's missing anything. I think he had all the tools. If you look back, I think 07, 08, when I first learned who Chris Paul was, I was like, this kid is phenomenal. He's playing with David West, and he's runner-up for MVP, and he's like in his second or third year as a player. So I was impressed back then. Look, when he was with Houston, if he doesn't get the hammy, I think they win that series. I think a lot of people think that Houston makes the finals with CP and James Harden. But the elephant in the room, NBA, David Stern, there's no reason why he shouldn't have gone to LA. With Chris Paul and Kobe, they would have won at least one championship. And then that cloud over CP's head about not winning a championship would just be pushed away, because I think that would probably be the greatest backcourt or one of all time. So to answer your question, Kyle, I think he had all the right tools. He just, certain circumstances didn't fall his way.
It's interesting. I know that the pathway to winning that championship, certainly could have been if maybe he was with the Lakers. But, I look at some of those teams at Lob City, man. And I don't, there's inexplicable to me how they didn't at least get to a Western Conference Finals. It's just inexplicable to me. That combination of having that kind of guard in CP3 and that front court with DeAndre and with Blake Griffin, it just is weird. It's weird. It's just
Clippers fans might lament and point a finger at the coaching, but I'm not going to do that because you just got the orange jacket. Shout out to Doc Rivers, Ubuntu, Celtics. That's a real thing. But yeah, it's I agree, man. Cal, I'm not a Clippers fan, and I would never stay up that late to watch the games. But when I saw the highlights, I used to be like, how come they're not in the championship?
Right.
It's just so much talent.
It's just weird. And maybe in some regards, I'm not using this to slight CP3 in the least bit, but I feel like this is why we have these kind of conversations sometimes when we think about great players, say like Isiah Thomas, because we're like, there is something within what Isiah is influencing and doing that is, I guess, not prevalent in where the current state of certain players are, certain teams are, and things of that nature. And it's just like, wow, you try to look into that and saying, if they could have just figured it out, found a way, it would have made that much difference in the world. I'll let you chime in here, Mr. Shaw.
Well, I mean, I'm more or less gonna, transition it out, and then before we close out, back to Isiah Thomas. I think one thing to come close, right? Uriah started this with the word resilience. Was in the finals 3 times, right? And the first time lost in a 7-game series against his air quote best friend, Magic Johnson, 4-3. Came back the next year and swept those boys. Took them off. So, baby face and all, it was nasty.
Swept those boys.
And then, handled Clyde and company in Portland the very next year as well, too. So before ultimately losing in the Bulls in the playoffs, to start the Jordan era and their run as well, too. But that's something that, to beat, again, he beat Magic. You know what I mean? He has that on his resume.
And it's not just that he beat Magic, he also beat the Lakers when they were still at the pinnacle of their game. And listen, at that time, any and everybody still had believed that the Los Angeles Lakers, essentially are the team to beat. So the moment that you began to see a little bit of that chink in the armor is when all of the Eastern Conference teams smelled blood in the water and said, there is no team out there. If it's not the Lakers, who else? Who else is going to be? because soon after that, there came the Chicago Bulls and their run. And, you know, it opened up another conversation completely altogether about how dominant the Eastern Conference teams were in that era, essentially.
Right.
Because if you got past the Detroit Pistons, essentially it was a foregone conclusion that you should be hoisting up the O'Brien Trophy.
Yeah, no, it's very, very true. And you think about those Bulls runs, it was Lakers first and Portland twice in a row, right? And through their first three-peat, you know, Jordan comes back and whatever the case may be. And then it was what, to Utah twice in Seattle, right? I think is what the Bulls beat for their second three-peat. So either way, man, like it's it's a testament to Isaiah because he played in what many people considered one of the harder eras of the NBA, you know, going against MJ, Bird, you know, Hakeem, Magic, as we said, like that is it's a murderer's row of Hall of Famers. And the fact that he has 2 chips out of that. And when we talk about guys like CP3 who weren't able to get over the hump with their proverbial contemporaries, it makes you just say, dang, you know what I mean? Sometimes you say, oh, were you born in the wrong era? And maybe so, but Isaiah was able to get over it in an era that we all herald as one of the greatest in NBA history.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren-Sharp, special guest, Uriah Young from Basketball Then and Now, joining us in our Reminisce Over You, Isiah Thomas edition of the conversation. Coming up, a couple of key moments of the era that was Isaiah, and then we'll get to close things out. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Callie Warren-Sharp, special guest, Uriah Young, joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. They reminisce over you, and we're talking about Isiah Thomas. And this has been an awesome conversation. I guess the best way for us to kind of really bring it all together is, you know, highlighting a key moment, a moment of, you know, that stands out, a performance, or, you know, maybe it's just statistical numbers. And I'll start with you, Uriah. You know, give me something that was considered as a poignant moment of, you know, how you saw and what you had seen from Isiah Thomas.
Yeah, I think it was the 88 finals when he hurt his ankle. He could have not played because of A, pain, and B, potentially really having significant damage to whatever, you know, ligament or whatever was going on with his ankle. But he decided to play it out and not only play, but rise to a level that nobody anticipated he would go. I forget how many points he had in that game in the fourth quarter, but he was hitting shots over the place, and he was visibly ailing, and you saw him limping, running down the court, doing his best. And I think that was inspirational to me.
25-point third quarter in that
Hello.
final. Right?
So I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I wasn't around to see Willis Reed play in the 72, 73 finals when he came out the tunnel. But in terms of putting it all on the line, giving his all, it doesn't get any better than that. So I would say, Cal, that memory resonates with me. And I think Isiah Thomas will forever be, in my mind, one of the greatest players for showing the courage and the commitment to his team to try and win a championship and then come back the next year and bring it home.
Yeah, I think it's not one particular moment, but it is the complete body of work. And I'll drill it down slightly into the ability to be a high-level scorer, but not like a super scorer. He wasn't a 30-point per game guy. It's 20, like 20 and 10, 20 and 10. That's kind of like who he was. And, you know, I think his career high was only like, not only, I shouldn't say that, but it was like 45, you know, right. but he's all famer. Like there's no two ways about that. And, you know, all those multiple years in a row of being an all-star. So going back to what I said earlier in the segment, earlier in the show, it was the playmaking too. I just don't think we think about him in that light, if you will. Like we know he was good and he could score the basketball. He won chips, whatever, but he was just so damn creative in a way that I think I even forgot before even kind of go back and looking again, because I was so in the moment of hating at the time.
Yes, that Boston hate, that don't count.
I couldn't appreciate, honestly.
Right.
And that's happened to me for a lot, because when you grow from fan to journalist, analyst, podcaster, etc., you just have a different mindset of how you evaluate the game. You know, right. And I think I've been able to go back and look at players like Isaiah, like Kobe, players who caused some of my teams a lot of harm and caused me some sleepless nights. But to understand what they really were about and how hard they had to work to be as good as they were, to be able to crush the dreams of other fan bases in the way that they did, I can really appreciate Isiah Thomas, for that. And I think, again, even outside of his playing career, the fact that he loved basketball so much and did so many different jobs within the sport, and continues to contribute to the sport today. So what a story career for somebody that we kind of underrate in a lot of ways, especially comes to his playing career.
Yeah. So, for me, because that moment that you mentioned, Uriah, stands out really more than anything. For what he was able to do in under those circumstances, to me, is just truly phenomenal. Especially the position that he played and what the responsibilities that he had on him. It's different than just being a center and playing front court. It's knowing that your movement dictates everything that needs to happen for this team to win. So to your point, that's one of those key moments. But the one that really stands out to me is against my beloved Boston Celtics. And this was actually the game that pretty much made me really, really despise the Detroit Pistons, but humble myself in respecting the Boston Celtics were probably going to have to move in a different direction or play in a different way for them to really be in that conversation of the powerhouses again in the Eastern Conference. And this was the 87 Eastern Conference Finals. And listen, when we talk about the Detroit Pistons, even though people consider it thug ball or whatever, they were still among one of the best defensive teams probably in NBA history during the Thomas era. Okay. If you were able to score on them, you get flowers and roses and bouquets, and you get a parade. Okay. They were just that damn good defensively. I know people talk about the Chicago Bulls and everything, but I think a lot of that from what you saw from the Chicago Bulls is predicated off of what you saw from the Bad Boy Pistons. And this was one of those games where during that time, the Boston Celtics were among one of the better teams defensively. And the Detroit Pistons go out and put 145 points out on my Boston Celtics and basically blow the doors off of them. But to me, it was his performance. He basically dropped 22 and 8. No turnovers. Okay. And it wasn't, it's not the numbers as much as it is how much of an impact he had. He made my Celtics look like a team that no longer were the Boston Celtics of the great 80s that people wanted to see playing against the Lakers like every single year in the NBA Finals. That was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of us recognizing that Larry Bird's time is basically come, right? And that the Celtics are going to have to start moving in a different direction to be able to stay with the likes of the Detroit Pistons and the Chicago Bulls and the other teams that are going to come up in the Eastern Conference. And so that performance to me stood out more than anything. Isiah Thomas put on a masterclass of showing us how important guard play really was at that time. And his ability to do that, I think, also opened up the floodgates for us to properly respecting the Detroit Pistons, especially when they went on their way to become back-to-back champions. So that moment right there is for me stand out more than anything.
Can I add one more thing about Isiah before we head out? I think the one thing that we have to remember is that the game is supposed to be fun. And with that fun comes expression. And nothing against Kawhi Leonard or Tim Duncan, who are very stoic in the way they played, phenomenal players, Hall of Fame players. But when Isiah played, you could tell he was having fun. You could tell his teammates had fun playing with him. And if we want this game to really grow globally the way that the commissioner is trying to put out there, which I believe is going to happen, and I think it's a wonderful idea, Isiah Thomas was the poster boy for that. Besides Magic Johnson, who had a smile as wide as someone's house, Isiah also had a very marketable image, the baby face, like you said, Cal. So I think Isiah had not only the skill, but he had the personality. And I think that's good for the game. And I think that's going to be part of his legacy.
Uriah, before we let you go, you've announced that the next season of Basketball Now and Then is on the horizon. crazy comparison with Josh Hart. Very timely as well too. I see what you're doing there, and very slow as well. What else can people look forward to from you, your team, coming up here in the next few weeks and months?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to say, first off, thank you for having me on your show. You guys, I have it bookmarked. I got to listen to the baseline. When you guys drop your episodes, you guys give great analysis. But to everyone listening, if when you're finished listening to the Baseline NBA podcast, maybe you need a little break from some of the debate style, check us out at basketballnowandthen.com. We're obviously on podcasts, Spotify and Apple. But ultimately, what we do, again, we're a bridge of past and present. We try to do it in a respectful way to elevate the game, enrich the game, not only educate fans, but give some context, challenge the thinking, like make people realize, like, wow, I never thought of Jerry Sloan and Josh Hart being compared. I know I didn't until my team fed me the concept. Our first episode will be launched the same week as the NBA launches. We post our episodes every Sunday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our first episode is going to be Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose. And we're supposed to do past and present players, but obviously Westbrook just retired. But I cannot wait to do that episode because Westbrook, I don't care what happened, with his jump shot or what have you. He was such a special player, and Derrick Rose too. So basketballnowandthen.com. Give us a follow, give us a listen. And once again, you guys have a great show. And thank you for having me on.
Now, we'd like to thank you for having us, host you in kind of reinvigorating our segment of the show, They Reminisce. We felt who none better to be able to help bless the segment once again than having you on board. And I let my man Shaw end this off. Send us away, my brother. Send us away.
Well, I mean, I think one thing too to look forward to is Uriah and I have become fast friends, colleagues, and we also have another show,
Yes.
So I'm because you are the creator of that. I'm a mere co-host on that show. So Ryan, do one more plug for us before we sign out on the Baseline.
Yes. So Warren and I, along with Reggie Ponder, who is a film critic in Chicago, and Ben Franzuski, who's a professional actor in LA, we do a basketball movie review show, and we've reviewed multiple films. He Got Game, Blue Chips was the most recent one. And coming up in the next couple of weeks, we will be doing a movie review on Above the Rim. So you talk about hip hop. No one better than Pac, right? In that role as Birdie. So yeah, it's called Hoops on Film. We're on Instagram now, obviously on podcasts, Apple and Spotify. So check us out. We have a good time reflecting on those films. We give you a little behind the scenes stuff. We talk about the cast, the realism of the basketball, which is what Warren's segment is all about. And we just have a great time reminiscing on those films.
Nice. Look at y'all, man. In the hopper. I like it. Hey, look,
I think you guys need to reach out to, Pete Rock and them and get the license for that song. Cause I could just hear them, the song coming in. When they reminisce over you.
Very lucky to give a little snippet of it when we were rolling out.
Okay.
It was only to pay homage to one of the great songs that were created.
You should have him as a guest. Have him guest on your show.
Yeah, that would not necessarily be a bad thing. Yeah. I listen. I'm sure they would love to talk a little basketball and mix it in with a little bit of little hip hop. You know what I'm saying?
Our guy Gerald is really good friends with Pete Rock. So
okay.
He had Pete Rock on his show multiple times, so that is not a far reach, to be very honest with you.
Nice.
Make it happen.
Well, as we all say, man, it's just been awesome having you on board with this, Uriah, and my man Shaw, as always, man. Another awesome show. for our listeners, man, this is how we do, baby. You know what I'm saying? Get ready to rock and roll. The NBA season is quickly running up on us. So definitely check out the Baseline NBA podcast. And as always now as well, too, be sure to check out basketball now and then, right? And be able to roll with the 19 Media Group family to give you everything you need to hear as it comes to the game of basketball, current, past as well, man. So for the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do. Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah. There's a happy man right now. His Christmas came very early for him. For the Baseline, Kylie Warren Shaw, and our man, all right. We like to say thank you for hopping on board with this, and we'll catch up with you next time.